Welcome back to Purpose by Design. You have a purpose by design, not by default. I am Dr. Pamela Hinkle, and I'm so glad that you're here today as we continue wholeness and health on purpose. I've got my pen, I've got my notebook, and I know we'll be going to school today because my very good friend who I call Dr. G, Dr. Garrett is in the house, and he is going to take us to school on mindset and emotional wellness and health and all of that. Who knows which direction we're going to end up at today, but I know it is going to be good because it always is when we get together. Garrett, so welcome back again, and would you please reintroduce yourself and tell everybody here today, who are you?
So I am. I call myself a mindset engineer, but really it's just mindset coach. It's just a derivative of life coaching, where I focus on people's mindsets. If you ever go into personal development, which, as Pamela knows, I call it personal discovery. It's that we just find out that the mindset is 95% of everything, and the rest is just, policies, procedures, practices, and if the mindset's not there, though, none of that other stuff is going to fall in place. And so that's what I do. Most of my clients come in with, just like any life coach, right, limiting beliefs and imposter syndrome and all those things, and all those things will play into your mental, emotional, your physical health at that point. And so that's what I do, just help people with their mindsets.
And you do it so well. And I speak from experience, because not only have I been able to be like on a panel with you or in these type of settings with you, I also have had the privilege of learning from you, because I've been in places where you've been teaching and educating. And that's why I have my trusty notebook here, because you always take me to school, and I'm always all the better for it. So I'm really, really excited that you're a part of this series and that you're giving of your time today to pour into us, because wholeness and health has to be on purpose. If we just wait for it to be by chance, the only thing that we have going for us, sort of, is genetics. And that's it. And that is such a small portion. When we realize that our wholeness and our health can be purposeful and it can be on purpose, now it, like you talked about it, it opens a whole nother area of discovery. And so in my opinion, then, my humble opinion is, I believe that then so much of that has to do with our mindset and our emotional well-being. So it has to start somewhere. And in fact, scripture says that God has declared, I wish above all else that you would be in health and that you would prosper as your soul prospers. So wholeness and health has to be connected to here and here, in my opinion. And that's why I wanted you to come on, because this is like, this is you supersized. Okay, this is the McDonald's drive-through. That's not a very healthy choice, but this is McDonald's drive-through supersized on this, talking to you, Dr. G. So why don't you start in and share a little bit about how you ended up in the, being this self-discovery mindset coach that you do, or engineering, and then just jump in and start talking about the importance of, the wholeness and health here and here, because it affects everything.
Yeah, my journey into being into coaching in this aspect, well, and I think a lot of life coaches have this, right? When coaches become a thing because we've gone through these journeys, and we find the tools and the principles and the things that we can apply to our life to come out of whatever muck we're in. And then we're like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to know this, so come with me, right? We get all excited. So my journey really was, I just everybody has the ebb and flow of life, these highs, these lows, and I think that everybody feels like their lows are like the epitome of the lowest that anybody could ever have, because we're really emotionally involved in those lows, right? And so I was no different, but I just got tired of really coming back to these low states. And just from my history and in this my spiritual journeys and my upbringing in the church, and I just knew that we didn't have to be at the lows. And so I wanted to, what was it, why did I keep ending up in those places? And so I jumped into, again, personal development, but this is why I call it personal discovery, right? So it's in that development, you start to understand or figure out or discover who it is that you truly want to be. And I'll even go a step further and say you start to discover who you truly are, because who you truly want to be is your true self, saying this is how I need to be expressing myself as. And then you discover who you currently are, right? The imposter that you've been walking around as is not who you were meant to be, who not you were created to be. That's what the world made us into. Our own, we bought into these beliefs of other people, and that made us who we are today. But that's not who we have to be tomorrow. And who we can be tomorrow is this true self. And so, through books and master classes and obviously classes that I took with you, with Bob Proctor, and all these magnificent people, I discovered who that true person was. And so it got me there. And that's really the high level. There's so much there's so much work that's involved with that, but that's the high level on where that went. And the mental aspect, I was really drawn into the mindset because um, I believe in everything that I read that if we couldn't get our mindset right, um, it's the mindset is the catalyst to everything else. So if we couldn't get our mindset right, we're not going to be able to change the habits, which we can really get into when we get into the wholeness of what we're talking about. We can't change the habits or the behaviors that are keeping us in disease or disease, or however you want. I like disease. It works for me. That's keeping us there because we don't understand who we are as God created us to be. But when we start looking into the mindset principles of what that looks like and how we shift the beliefs, and then the habits and the behaviors then start to shift as well. It all starts with the mind, and understanding that our mind is us in totality. It's the mind encompasses all of us in our whole being. And so the body is just a vehicle of what the mind is working to do. So I was, and maybe it's because of my doctorate is in computer science, so maybe it was because of that background where I started looking us at like computers, where we were programmed, and we can shift the program to go back to a different operating system, and all that fun stuff. But that it was the mindset that really just stood out to me, and I connected with it. And I feel like, um, in all confidence, that I connected with in a way where now I can explain it to people in the layman's terms, and have them understand that, oh, okay, so all I have to do is really this, and then the internal work, and then watch my external results just be affected by it.
And that's so true, because you have such a way of communicating what you have learned. And that, and also, you are the product, be the product of the product, right? So you're not talking just from something that you've read in a textbook. You are the textbook. You've kind of gone through that all, and you have experienced it, and you are really good at empathizing with somebody else, like feeling what they feel, because you know what, you've been there. I love the whole statement of self-discovery. It's a statement that I will utilize, because it is such an all-encompassing term, to discover self. What does that mean? What does that look like? So I think that would be a great question to launch out on here. So in the whole idea of wholeness and health on purpose, what does self-discovery mean and look like to you when embarking on that topic?
Then that really is it's a perfect question because of where I was at. So when I was in this rock bottom state, right, and I'm trying to work on who is Garrett, who is this person, who do I want that person to be, there were aspects that really stood out to me. Like I would watch pastors on giving sermons, and I would watch motivational speakers on stage, and I would watch people helping others, motivating them, bringing them along with them in their journey. And I wanted to be that badly. But and here's where it ties in so nicely, because I had a um, a self-proclaimed diagnosis of social anxiety, and I'll tell you why it was self-proclaimed. So I had social anxiety, and I suffered from it for a long time. Going out in public, very silently suffered in it, but I would go out in public and just the anxiety, going to networking events for my business, uh, talking on the phone was a terrible thing. People, I had a I joked that my personal space was so much bigger. So my dance space was I needed more space. Like I needed to be a solo dancer and not have somebody with me, because my personal space was just insane. I remember going to a restaurant to pick up a friend who worked there, and the restaurant was so crowded and so many people were in my personal space that I literally passed out. I couldn't deal with it. The anxiety was so much. And so I always wanted to talk on stages, be this motivational person, give these messages, talk. And I've had a journey. I dropped out of high school. I ran away from home when I was 16. I went from there to achieving this doctorate. So I had a journey. I had successes that I knew I could share to people. But how was I going to do that if I couldn't go out? I couldn't be in public the way that I needed to be. So I looked at that person and I said, well, all right. In my discovery journey, I understood that the label that we give to ourselves. So this is that's the self-diagnosis, right? I attached myself to this label of social anxiety. When I said I have social anxiety, or I am a person that suffers from social anxiety, that became a label of me. It was a characteristic that I brought on myself. And through my studies and the classes and everything that I learned, is that there's a piece that what you believe to be true will be.
Yeah.
And I really got into this idea, especially biblically, right? Where I'm like, okay, well, if we're told, let the weak say I am strong, or if we're say within, we have all the strength, we have everything that we need through the power of God, through the name of God, then I don't have to be this. And I started understanding what with my kids, because everybody says, well, I was diagnosed with this. And my kids, what does that even mean? So it's like if you take your car into the garage, right? And they give you diagnostics and they say, well, this is what's wrong with your car. This needs to be fixed. This needs to be fixed. This needs to be fixed. And you're like, cool. And then you get it fixed. Then that your car no longer suffers from that diagnostic. So when we are diagnosed with anxiety, we'll take medicine to help with that, but it's not something that we have to carry for the rest of our lives. It's just a diagnostic. And
Yeah.
so when we learn how to self-heal, when we learn how to utilize what God has innately created within us, then we can start saying, I may be weak with anxiety, but through Him, through the great I am, I'm strong. And I stepped into that and I stopped claiming the anxiety. And I started to see myself to go into public and being able to be comfortable with people. I started saying, I'm a hugger. I'll hug anybody now. I'm like, just bring it in, because I wanted to step into that power of I can be who I choose to be. And I choose to be someone who does not suffer from the social anxiety. I
Yeah.
choose to be the person that can get on a stage and be completely comfortable and talk with that. I choose. And that's that power of choice is our superpower that God gave us. He said, you choose that. Let the weak say, I am strong. You have to choose that though, right? Either you choose to stay weak or you choose to be strong. And I chose a different path. And the more I started to visualize this in my mind, the more I was very comfortable with people. Now, when people meet me now, and even just, you could probably tell from here, like when I talk, they're like, there's no way that you suffered from, there's no possible way that that was a thing. And it's really fun when my sister is in the crowd, or if she's around there, because she'll tell you, she's like, no, this Garrett is a product of the product. He was this person. I could not call to order pizza on the phone. It was terrible. Like that phone conversation would have been so traumatic for me. And I still don't call and order pizza because we have an app for that. But it's that piece. And I overcame the social anxiety, right? And not because of what God created us with. The tools that he created us with is something that we can do. And for me, that was that emotional. I was emotionally bound to this anxious feeling and in prison, and understanding that I can choose a different path, but it had to start with that choice, with the mindset that it is possible, with this new belief that I didn't have to be in that prison. And that's where it starts. It starts with the mindset. And
Yeah.
that I feel like it ties nicely into this
It does.
wholeness.
It ties beautifully into that. And a couple of things that you said, I love how you explained self-diagnosis. It's that accepting, this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then you accept it. So then you dress like it, you act like it, you talk like it, you walk like it, you become it. But you also then said that you made a different choice. So there was a place and a time where you changed the diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
That is so cool. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, because on the heels of that, you said that you came out of prison, like you had been in a prison and you came out of prison. So changing your diagnosis, you equated it to feeling like being in a prison and coming out of prison.
Mm-hmm.
So can you go a little bit further with us on that, like how you felt like you were in a prison? Because so many people probably feel like, oh yeah, I totally relate to that. You're reading
Mm-hmm.
my mail, Dr. G. But then also like changing that diagnosis, that's a big deal, because we're told in medical communities, therapy communities, I mean, that's just, this is your lot in life. And we can give you some coping tools, but anxiety is your best friend. Like this is just the way that it is. And you are giving hope right now to people that have been given that exact diagnosis from a medical doctor or a therapist. And thank God for them. Thank God for them,
Mm-hmm.
because they're helping a lot of people. But I'm hearing you say that from right there, like we haven't even gotten into the other stuff of wholeness and health, right? But this is a huge part of it. Like you were afraid to call the pizza man. And now, not that you need to call the pizza guy now, but you now can call and order pizza. We were just talking about you driving out to Salt Lake next week to hang out and visit, because Kathy's having an event and I'm going to be there. And as you're saying what you're saying right now about being so froze up, I'm like, holy cow! Like that would have been something you would have never done, I'm assuming.
No, it's, I mean, I would have done it, but that's where it feels like it's a prison. It's like I was existing, but I was existing in this cell where I really couldn't express myself the way I wanted to express myself. So I felt like that true me that we were discussing earlier was just locked up, and something that I wanted to do so badly, but I couldn't, because I knew that the outcome of that would be, passing out in a restaurant, or having that, breaking out in this cold sweat. I remember my first my first wife. I told her about this, and she was like, "Oh, I don't know, whatever," and she didn't really understand it. When we went to a concert, and she was taking me through the crowd, and she looked back at me and saw my face and just pulled me, just drugged me through, because she saw that fear that was really there, like, oh Lord, this is going to happen again. I don't want this to happen. I don't want this to happen. And so although I would go out and do stuff, like I said, I suffered in silence because I had kids that I had to go and do football games with, and this and that, and scouts. I did scouts with my kids, and all those kids in my personal space it was so much for me. So although I knew I had more in me, I just couldn't get it out. And that's where the prison piece came from. And so, but when you choose, and this is the key, so you can literally say, I have the key to my own cell. And when you understand that, when you believe that, I think the belief is the bigger piece, because there's the belief that we can talk about anything in health. And if we're trying to go to the gym, or we're wanting to do this, or we wanting to do that, there is a belief that's going to be tied into that. Because what we'll try to do is change the behavior, like what I was doing, change the behavior. I'm going to go out and I'm going to will myself just, power through it and be just completely miserable. Or I can change the belief about who I am, and then understand that just opens up the door. So it's that belief. Shifting the belief then is just taking the key out of the pocket that God gave you, right? That God-given key, and just unlock the door. And he said, there you go, right? And that's all we have to do, is just shift that belief system. And it came to analyzing why did I believe that? And I can go back, and there's a long story about high school and elementary school and things that I feel like got me to that place, but because I was buying into someone else's belief about who I was. And then when I started to buy into the belief of what I know God created me to be, that's what changed everything, right? We step into that purpose, and then it's so freeing. And understand that I did have a story, and I do have a story. And every time I turn around, that story just keeps getting better and better and better and better. And now I'm able to share on any platform, because I feel like that's what God called me to do. That this is my calling. And I think you can tell, if we were talking about computer science, you'd be like, okay, he's kind of nerdy. But then when we start talking about this aspect, you're like, oh my gosh, I can feel his passion in this. And
Yes.
I think that's the telltale sign of what I was supposed to be doing. I don't know if I answered your question, but
You
I sure
did.
enjoy talking about it.
That was awesome. So it brought me to another question. So that person that's sitting out there today going, yeah, Dr. G, that's what I need. How do I shift? How do I shift? How do I take how do I take the key out? Like, and start to be driven by my purpose and the way God has created me to be, because I'm so stuck.
Well, I mean, it's the narrative, right? And I think with that verse, let the weak say I'm strong, he says change the narrative of what you are talking about yourself in. And we can get into that, the power of I am, right? And Wayne Dyer said it best, where like, we have to be careful about what follows that I am statement, because we're literally calling in the name of God. He's I am that I am. And so, but changing the narrative and saying, okay, God, this is what God told you to do. Change this piece, saying I am a person who struggles with anxiety, to say no, I'm a person that loves people so much that I can go out in public, I can share everything with people, and that's who I am, is that person that's comfortable doing that. And once you start to change the narrative, the science behind this, it's at first, and it happened with me, it will happen with anybody, your subconscious is in it's efficient where it's at. We're actually addicted to the anxiety. We don't know this yet, but we're addicted to it because we have become efficient living with that. And so when we try to do something different, we change the narrative. The subconscious goes, no, no, I'm this. I've always been this. This is who I've always been. But we learn that through this constant space repetition of telling the new narrative, the truth, and I can get into that too, that the truth, over and over and over and over, the subconscious, it's part of its duties is to say, okay, the things that we do over and over and over again, I need to become efficient at that. So it shifts. The subconscious then starts to buy into what you're telling it. Not at first. Eventually, though, you'll just go out in public, and it's the most miraculous thing. But is that how we're created, right? You'll go out in public, and you've told yourself that you are so comfortable, you're so comfortable. Then you go out in public and go like, oh my gosh, I'm comfortable in public. And it just shifts one day. The subconscious just takes it and then makes it your new habitual way of living. And that's the key, right? But the key is, one, changing the narrative and being consistent and persistent in that that new narrative. And everybody says, like, I feel like I'm lying to myself. And this is the truth, right? And this is what's so powerful what was so powerful for me was the truth is this person that you desire to be. Remember, I said that's the true you. So
Right,
you've been living the lie. Now you're telling yourself the truth. And it's that whole piece, right? The truth shall set you free. And this is what we're talking about.
yes.
Tell yourself the truth, change the narrative, be persistent and consistent in that every day. Step into that. So now when I go out, then when I went out in public, I stepped into the truth. I walked out and says, I am this person. I am so comfortable. And I showed up that way. And it was uncomfortable at first, but the more here's like, I think the most beautiful thing is that when you show up that way, you are that way. And I always had a problem with acting as if, because I don't act as if, I act as I am. And when I show up that way, I am that way. I just have to habitually show up that way. And when I do, like I said, the subconscious just kicks in. And then one day, there you are. That's who you are. Now you are, and at least in that aspect, the true version of who you were supposed to be. And there's so much more of that imposter that we have to shed. But change the narrative, be consistent and persistent. And once you step into that, understand that you are that.
Oh, that is so powerful, Dr. G. You said, I wrote this down, addicted to the anxiety. And I'm like, okay, he needs to circle back to that, because there is a lot of people addicted to the garbage they're circling in, and they don't realize it. But you hit the nail right on the head. Like, whether that could be anxiety, it could be a bad relationship, it could be the wrong relationship with money or with food, or even health in general, like
Mhm.
having an addiction to the problem. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's habit. So we say, if we're alcoholics, we have a bad habit with alcohol. It's a habit. We have a habit of smoking. We have a habit. And so what's the habit? So understand, again, the subconscious takes the things that we do over and over and over again and makes it a habit. That's what it does. So it can be efficient. It says, okay, I need to free up the conscious mind to do more things. So whatever you're doing over and over and over again, I'm going to make a habit out of it. So you don't have to think about it consciously anymore. And so somewhere down the line, we can look at things, events that happened in our life that gave us some anxiety. And then someone said, oh, well, you have anxiety. We attach that label. That's the belief system. The subconscious goes, okay, that's who I am. And then you just live that way for your whole life. So
Mhm.
because the subconscious wants to be efficient where it's at, that's where the addiction comes from. And all addiction is just a habit. It's all it is. It's just a habit that we have to break, but it's backed by a belief system. So why am I anxious? Why do I feel like I need alcohol? Why do I feel like I need this? Why do I feel like, let's analyze this and go, what is that? And then once we can figure that out and realize that's all it is. It's just a habit. And the subconscious, the addiction is the subconscious wanting to stay efficient. That's all it is. And if you're efficient being an alcoholic, then you have to change the belief of that and say, okay, I don't need to be this. And I don't have to own this label of I'm an alcoholic, because understand it's just a habit. So let's just shift the habit. But where's the habit come from? And this is where it really kicks in, is that we try to change the behavior. We say, well, I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop doing that. We can't change the behavior. The behavior is the effect. We have to look at the cause, and the cause is the belief. So there's some self-reflective thing that you have to go in and understand that this belief that I have to have this, or I have to do this, or I have to show up this way because I was diagnosed with anxiety. You don't have to. Just believe something different. And it's that easy, but so hard to do, right? It's so simple, but so hard to do.
So I have an example I want to share, and then I'd like it if you'd pick it apart and kind of tell everybody how the subconscious mind was working,
Yeah.
and from your standpoint of what you see. So somebody that I know, and this happened many, many years ago, they were just a chain smoker. Okay, smoke, 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 smoke. and they always were wanting to quit, right? But they were addicted. And I'm not saying that your body doesn't have the desire for the nicotine or whatever. Okay. But they would go and do a patch, the nicotine gum, you name it, chew the gum, I mean, just like, okay, crazy. And so here they were like chewing the gum and puffing on a cigarette at the same time. Oi, that's not good for you either.
Mhm.
Had gone to church and had even gone down in prayer. People call you down and go get prayer for God to help you to quit smoking. This continued year after year after year, and the person continued to smoke. So finally, this person went to a minister friend of mine and had said, I don't want to smoke anymore, but I can't quit. I keep trying. And this was the response of this minister. And so I'm like, I know you're going to be able to totally just pick this apart for us and show us how the subconscious mind worked. The minister said, I don't want you to say again, I can't quit. I don't want you to say, I'm never buying another pack of cigarettes again. In fact, when you leave church today and you go and bump up one, pump one out of them, take one out of your pack of cigarettes, take one out to smoke it, this is what you do. As you're taking it out, as you're lighting up, as you're puffing away, you say, I don't like cigarettes. I don't like to smoke. Well, this guy thought, that's nuts. What's wrong with this guy? Isn't he going to tell me that I'm a bad person? Isn't he going to say this is ruining my lungs? Is he going to get, all this stuff? And so we kind of argued with the minister a little bit, this friend of mine, and said, blah, 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 what do you mean? You're a minister and you're telling me that it's okay? No, I'm not telling you it's okay to smoke. I'm just saying, stop saying I can't.
Mhm.
And so he said, every time I smoke, yep, you just say, I don't need cigarettes. I don't smoke. And so anyways, he did that. And like I said, he was a chain smoker. So, picture that every time he's smoking and in between as many puffs as he can come, as he would take in a day, he is saying, I don't like cigarettes. I don't like cigarettes. Dr. G, 2 weeks later, just 2 weeks later, he was done smoking and has never smoked since. And it wasn't some big, huge aha moment when all of a sudden he was grossed out with cigarettes or had some, epiphany vision. He was doing what he was always doing. And he bumped one up out of the pack and said, I don't like cigarettes. And he went, I don't.
Mhm.
And he still he still lit it and tried to smoke it. And he didn't like it anymore. He didn't want it. He
Mhm.
didn't want it. So the whole thing, the whole desire was gone. And he thought, okay, I'll throw it away. I'll get rid of it. And continued to make that confession of that I don't smoke, I don't like him. And had this thought in the back of his head that, that this is an addiction. I'm addicted. So it could come back. But the thing was, it never did. And he continued to tell himself, you don't need it. I don't need it. I don't like cigarettes. So, and to this day, still a non-smoker after years of agony, going through all kinds of programs and everything else. It was 2 weeks with the cigarettes in hand saying,
Mhm.
I don't like cigarettes. So tell us what happened there. Use that example and walk us through. We'll follow the bouncing ball. What did the subconscious mind do with all of that? What were all the other people missing?
So, well, he changed the narrative, and that's really what it's all about. So even though he was doing the deed, again, we try to change, and it's brilliant, right? So I just said we can't change the behavior, that's the effect. We have to change the cause, which is the belief. And once you change the belief, the cause, the behavior automatically changes with it. It has to. That's just the laws of nature. And so although he was doing the behavior, he was telling himself a different story, changing the narrative. And it was beautiful about that is that the subconscious didn't necessarily have to like fight back, right? When we are addicted to something and we try to cut cold turkey, uh, the subconscious is wanting it because of that addiction. And there's the chemical part of the addiction actually goes away really quickly, days, a week, whatever. I don't know the exact time period right offhand, but it goes away pretty quickly. It's the mental aspect that really keeps us in the addiction, because we always, I'm a smoker, I'm a smoker, I'm a smoker, I'm a smoker. And that's what we always tell ourselves. And so when he was saying, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't need it, I don't need it, although he was doing that, he was telling the subconscious the right story, the truth, which because you don't need it. And so he was telling the subconscious the truth. And eventually this is, and it feels like it's just an overnight sudden thing, but really it's, that has taken in, it's just the awareness just sort of opens up. So the subconscious just bought into this new story, this new narrative, this new belief that he didn't need it. And so here's the cool thing about the subconscious, right? Whatever we believe to be true, and this is the aspect, whatever we believe to be true will be. And why is that? Because what we believe to be true, the subconscious has to find the ways to justify that truth. And so when he was saying this new narrative, and the subconscious then bought into that belief, now it has to justify. I have to find ways to justify this belief. I have to make this true. So now when he's smoking the cigarette, the subconscious is going, no, you don't need that. It tastes gross. It's this and that. And it just brings all the justifications of why I don't need cigarettes. And that's what it does. And so really it's brilliant in that way, because he just was doing these affirmations, and the subconscious eventually said, okay, cool. This is over and over and over again. This is my new way of living, my new belief. So I'll habitually show up this way. And now I no longer need cigarettes. And the powerful thing is that although in the back of our mind, we keep thinking, oh, it's an addiction that might come back, you're actually now free from that. So you can stop saying, I have this addiction, because you no longer have it. It's no longer there. It no longer rules your life. You are ruling that aspect now. You have taken control. You have taken back the power from that. And so we can stop worrying about the addiction aspect, because it's no longer there. And really, once you're done, you'll go and people will be smoking, and you're like, oh, it just smells, everything about it just revolts you, because this is your new belief system. And that's really what was going on.
Wow. So the whole time as he's puffing away, when so many leaders or whatever important people would say, well, you're not, you're still smoking. You're going to just keep smoking. His words were creating a new behavior, creating that new habit that once it became solidified, and it was solidified through his narrative, not through the behavior. That is so huge. It was the new behavior was solidified through the narrative, not through the wrong behavior. It came through the right narrative. And that's why self-talk is mastery.
Mm-hmm.
That is so powerful. Okay, Dr. G, so taking this and kind of streamlining us in to health and wholeness, and however you go, however you're directed on this, there's a lot of people out there, whether it is they're struggling with their bodies are sick, they eat really bad food and they know they need to change, but they're having such a hard time. We kind of answered that a little bit through the cigarette story. Or they just want to live better lives, or maybe they're really overweight and to have such a hard time getting rid of that weight. Maybe they're concerned about genetic things in their upline or something. So if wholeness and health is on purpose, we can purposefully choose it. What does that mean when it comes to our mindset?
That's a good question. Well, and tying all this together, streamlining all this, there's a couple things in the mindset that we have to be aware of. One, we have to set the intention and of where we're going to go. So if we look at it in the terms of goals, right? We have this idea, oh, this is what we want. And yes, although we believe that if I think it here, I can hold it here, that's true. but we have to understand what that thinking process looks like. So
Okay.
we set the intention. We're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to, my intention is I want to start eating healthy. My intention is I want to do whatever that looks like. And there are some medical things, I think you said this earlier, outside of some genetic things like thyroid issues or whatever that looks like. But I will still argue that I think that even that could be healed, just because I believe in miracles. So but that's a whole other thing, right? Whole other conversation. For the mindset aspect, to set the intention and then understand what the thought process is. So again, it's whatever is in your conscious mind gets impressed into your subconscious, and then your subconscious does what it weighs it against your belief systems, and then it does actions based off of that thing, right? So
Right.
initially, so let's just use working out, going to the gym as a thing, because it's a great example. We set the intention, all right, I'm going to be healthy, I'm going to start working out, I'm going to go to the gym, this is what I'm going to do. And the second we set that intention, right, we start planning. All right, these are my gym days, these are the days that I'm gonna meal prep on Sunday, and we start planning. We're doing everything that we're supposed to do. Those conscious thoughts begin to go into the subconscious, and we're excited because this is what we really want. This is something that we want. So there's excitement, anticipation, and so we do that. We're changing the behavior in that aspect because we're excited about this, right? So we do the meal prep, we go to the gym, everything is great, and we do it for about a week, and then we get on the scale. So our conscious thought was progression, progression, progression. And then we get on a scale, and then the conscious thought goes to current results. These are my current results. And that is in your conscious mind. That goes into your subconscious. It generates thoughts and feelings of disappointment. Oh, I failed. Nothing's working out as fast as I want to do, because we live in a microwave society. So if we don't lose 10 pounds in 2 days, then it just doesn't work. And so, but now that's in our conscious mind, and that conscious thought goes into our subconscious. It generates those feelings of disappointment and this and that. And so what's the action then is you give up. So, but we always have to go back to that intention. If we want to be successful in this aspect, we write down these goals. This is why vision boards work. This is why writing down goals, goal cards, I've heard of life books and all these things that where it's constantly in your frame of mind. Put pictures on your mirror of what you want to look like. I mean, even go to Photoshop and manipulate your own body to be whatever is going to keep that in your conscious mind
Yeah.
for the excitement and not on the current results. Because we always have to go, where am I going tomorrow? What am I doing tomorrow? And then that dream, that fantasy of where we want to be, we have to be mindful of today. So it's every day we set the intention that what can I do today to get to where I want to go to tomorrow? And it has to be in this place of why too. Like, why do I want to lose weight? Why do I want this? And it's not going to be sufficient. I'm going to tell you this right now. It's not going to be sufficient to say, well, I want to be healthy to show for my kids, right? People do that all the time. I want to be healthy because I want my kids to see me as a healthy parent and this and that. And I want to do that. But a lot of times that why I am doing this is not, it's not strong enough, because we'll use our kids as an excuse not to go to the gym. So you can't say I'm doing this for my kids and then use your kids for an excuse not to go. You have to really get in deep on why is it that you want this? Because if the dream of you having this healthy lifestyle, if that ignites you, we have to why do you want that? And when you define the why, that starts to fan that flame that's within inside us, that gives us that intrinsic motivation that's going to say, I'm getting there, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. Pamela, you'll remember, and I reference this speech all the time, the common denominator of success. So he talks about in that it's not what people do, it's not going to the gym, right? It's not the what, it's the why people do that. The people that are successful at the gym or in their health and the way they eat, they have a reason, a why, a purpose behind that gets them up every single day to do the things that they don't want to do. Half of them don't want to go to the gym either, but they have a purpose in mind that just motivates them, that intrinsic motivation. So you have to set the intention. You have to constantly have this in your conscious thought. And you have to develop this idea of, why do I even want this? And be honest with yourself. Again, you can't say kids, you can't say because society says so. There is something that you have to tap from deep down inside to motivate you to do these actions. And I think from a mindset point of view, that's really where it's at. And that's food, exercise, mental health, spiritual health. It encompasses everything. That's really the process for all of that.
That makes so much sense. And I am going to relate it back to another scenario. And then again, have you, because we still have time to do it, have you kind of do another little pick it apart thing. So a number of years ago, I injured my back, and I was literally in a chair or in a bed for months and months and months. And I am a mindset person and a person that believes in the power of my confession and those words after I am and all of that, right? So my mentor at that time, who was also a minister, called me up at one point, and I was waiting for him to call. I'm like, okay, his name's Joe. When Joe calls, he's going to give me some mighty words or some earth-shaking prayer, and I'm going to get up out of this chair, and right. And so, to my great disappointment at the time, although it was such wisdom in his counsel, I was like, why am I in this chair and I'm in so much pain and blah, blah, blah. And I did not get an, oh, there, Pamela. I didn't get heaven and earth shaking and I'm standing up out of my chair either. Now, I'm not in that chair anymore, for anybody that is wondering, that doesn't know me. But this is what was said. He said, Pamela, this time you need to walk it out by faith and not by what you see. You can be captive to your injury or captivated. He had said captivated to God. And so I was angry. I hung up the phone and was angry because I didn't want the responsibility. This wasn't my responsibility. I'm not the one. I fell. It's not my responsibility. I didn't do this to myself. I didn't want that responsibility. Where's somebody else going to come and feel my pain and identify with me? But instead, I got this really strong, like, what do you mean I'm not in faith? But I had to come back to, am I going to agree here, in pointing to my head and my heart here if you can't see? Am I going to agree in those places with what I'm feeling? Or am I going to begin to change what I'm saying and seeing? And I made a choice after grumping and frumping for a little bit about that I needed to start saying things and seeing things differently. And to me, that was a turning point greatly, as I quit waiting for it to just happen. And I started taking ownership of it from the inside of me out, and not just looking at God over there someplace, like, we'll do something, but God saying, I'm waiting for you to do something so I can do something, right? So with that, I would love to hear some feedback from you for people that are listening. And I just want to hear it because you always have such great feedback. So what was going on in there in that time when I made that change?
Well, I really want to go on the spiritual realm of this one, and it all ties in, right? It's the mindset. So what is faith? It's this belief, right? It's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, right? So let's get biblical in that. And so, and I didn't really understand that for the longest time, but until really just recently. And when I say recently, I'm like, I started looking into faith and what that means within the last few weeks. And so I was questioning this idea that things about God's time, like, what is God's time? And then you might have a whole bunch more information on this than I do, but I was like, well, what is God's time? Because everything that I know It's once we ask for, if you ask for it on earth, it's done in heaven, right? All these pieces. And so there's never this piece that's, I'll get it to you whenever, right? There's always this piece that it's done. So I want to know what God's time is. And so and I was just really researching this. So here's the faith. There's the instantaneous thing that we have to walk within faith, right? Do we have faith? Sure. I have faith in a lot of things, but how do we apply the faith? We have to walk into it. And so in the mindset realm, it's this belief that if I can do something, and honestly, if we go back to all these conversations about time and narrative and all this, it's shifting the belief. Shifting the belief. But you realize that belief shift can happen like instantaneously.
Yes.
Instantaneously. And so when we look at the miracles that were performed in the Bible, there was this piece: do you believe? Yes, I believe. What happened next? Get up and walk. Get
Right.
up and walk within that faith. And so there's this piece that in my mind that it's God's time is instantaneous. He says it's done for you. Now you have to grow in your belief to be in alignment with that aspect, and then it's received. And so what's happening with you is like you were like, oh yeah, God can do it, God can do it, God can do it. And he's like, it's done.
Yes.
Get up and walk. Get up and do your part, and
Yes.
then watch that come to fruition, because my part's done. I've created it. I've done it for you. And yes, there's these times that where maybe there's specific times where it's like it's done, but I need you to go through this first, because it's the growth. It's the growth of who we have to be in alignment with this piece. If we're not ready for abundance and wealth, then he's not going to give us abundance and wealth. We have to, it's there. He says it's already here for you, but you have to grow into the point where you are able to accept that and receive that, and not, be an idiot about it, right? So there's those things that it's on us. We're the God's time of, we have to get into the point where we're able to receive that. And to me, it's answered better spiritually than it is in the mindset aspect. But the mindset aspect is there's a belief, and until we walk within that belief, until we're so apt to say, here's my current results and woe is me, and that's the cycle, right? So if we go back to the thought process, it's current results go subconscious actions. So woe is me, subconscious gives me woe is me, actions are I'm just going to stay here because I'm so terrible and blah, blah, blah. And so we have more of the same. So we hit that cycle. But the second, and your mentor was brilliant. He's like, change your focus.
Yeah.
Push the conscious thought onto this aspect of what God can do for you. And that's the conscious shift then allowed you to walk into the faith, and not to say, I have faith. I'm walking in it, and then watch the things that will happen. And so I think the spirituality aspect and the mindset aspect, we're created to do this. And that's why we look at all these aspects, and faith is so huge, because our belief doesn't have to be so insane, right? We have the faith the size of a mustard seed. We can tell that mountain to move from there to there. Now, why would we ever want to, unless we're talking about the mountains that those proverbial mountains that are in our way from getting to our success? And really, could that be what's being stated, is like, that's not even an obstacle for me. That's really whatever. And so we have this faith that we can do that, but we have to walk within it. We can't just say, I want to win the lottery, and then don't go buy a lottery ticket. There's actions that we have to do. And I think that's the beauty of what is the mindset is. It's changing the focus of something, and then walking towards that focus every day. What can I do today to get to there? And so you did the work to come out of this wheelchair because you had the focus of, no, I'm going to walk, and God's going to let me. He's going to have that power to do that, and through him I can. And so you do the actions based with your conscious thought on the end result of where I want to go, being mindful of what I can do today.
That's so true. And as soon as I've, just really laid it down and went, okay, what is it walking by faith right now mean? Am I actually doing it, or am I making an excuse, right? Then that narrative had to change. Well, then if I'm going to walk by faith, as you said, it's done. So now then I have to put actions behind what I believe. And if that means that I swing both feet over this edge of the bed and I don't get any further than that today, and then I swing my feet back up on the bed, I made an action, right?
Mhm.
And those were the things that started that I began to do. And my focus came off of being stuck and went into becoming being, my focus was on God, but walking into what he had for me, and letting there be a testimony that would be built out of it. So that's really powerful what you said there, and it's so true. Yep, the spiritual and the mindset do really flow together. They ebb and flow like glue, really kind of stick to each other. So as I'm looking at the time, we're starting to wind down. Is there anything else that you didn't get to touch on today? We'll have you back again. So is there anything today that you didn't get to say that's like a burning desire and you're like, yeah, I need to say this?
No, I believe, no, I don't think there's anything that I would add. I mean, because I think enough is said. I guess if I were to say anything, is that all the stuff that we're talking about today, and you talk about with other people on other shows, there's the piece, like, we want the change, we want to do this, we want to do this, and now you have all this knowledge, right? Everything that we've talked about is, we gave you knowledge, and anybody else that you talk to is giving you knowledge. And I always have to tell people, knowledge is not the power, it's the application. Knowledge is empowering, right? You have to apply the things that are being told to you. And so most of us just say, oh, that was interesting, now I know. Well, knowing is only half the battle. Now you have to apply, and you have to go, and you have to live this. Again, it's the constant space repetition of the new narrative that you're wanting from your life. And it doesn't, you have to do those actions. You have to have that constant space repetition of the application of the knowledge that you have. And that's where the change comes from. So I guess if anything, that's what I would put it. But all the material is there that we talked about today, I believe. And there's so much more. I mean, there's so much more to us. We're pretty profound beings. But this is good. It was good conversation, Pamela.
Oh, okay. How do people reach out to you to continue along your journey with you?
Probably the socials. I'm terrible at socials. I know I just gave you a narrative that I probably shouldn't have. I do my best to be on the socials, but I really have a stigma with them. But you can follow me there. There's some new things coming up on the YouTube channel, so there's going to be some shows coming up. So there's that. If you just really just want to reach out to me, you can just go to my website, which is just garrettgoggans.com, and you can reach out to me from there.
Fantastic. And all of that is in the description. And we know that Dr. G is working on that narrative, and he is going to be a social media Mongol. He's just, he's
I'm
going to.
just Pamela. I'm just gonna have somebody do it for me.
You do the part that you can do, and then you give it to somebody else. You delegate the rest of it to somebody else that can actually get the posts out there and all of that. That's exactly what you need to do. It's so liberating and so freeing. Nicole does that for me. I can come up with content, and then I hand it off, and she makes it beautiful and gets it out there. So that's exactly what you need to do. And this is a great way to end this program, because you just sort of saw the manifestation of a narrative being changed. So he's saying what he's saying. I'm making a joke about it. And then Dr. G says, yeah, I just got to have somebody else do it. Okay, now let's follow that thought process. Well, here's some knowledge. Here's some ways that you can do it. And now he'll follow through with that and begin to take advantage of that and have somebody else do it. So This has been so uplifting. As always, our conversations are phenomenal, and I feel like we could go 3 hours and it would feel like 5 minutes. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on again, and we're going to have you on again and again. And I do want to make mention that in the Coach Doctor's workbook, that Dr. Garrett is in that book. He also has, do you have one book or two books? How many books do you have?
Oh Lord.
Three
So I
books?
have two.
Sure.
So I have the Moving Upstream Without a Paddle book, and then I have the the one I did with Giselle Vasquez, the Lifting the Anchor, and that one by far is probably the one I love the most. There's so much stuff in there, and it's such a transition for me, being too technical, to just Giselle going, "You need to get in touch with your heart, Garrett." And so there, it was a different experience for me. So I love that one. So Releasing the Anchor, and then yes, the Coach Doctors. Um, Obviously, there's some powerful people in that one. So not just myself, but so many others that are giving you these tools for life, right? So yeah.
No, it was amazing. And your chapter is so powerful in there. So you guys can hook up with him. You can get those books, follow him on social media, and watch all of this transformation happen. Thank you so much, Dr. Garrett. Love you so much. And we'll have you back again really soon. And thank you so
Uh,
much.
Thank you for having me, and I love you too.
Listen, everybody, help us take this message global, okay? It's really easy. Les Brown says like it and share it. So you can push that subscribe button if you haven't, but you can also share this message right now. Go ahead and do it. Just I'll still be here. So just go ahead and share it. You can do that on social media, messenger, direct message, email, text. I mean, there's so many ways to take this and share it. So share it with somebody and help us make a statement to the world that these messages are needed. And as always, you are here on purpose with a purpose, by design, not by default. So go out there and keep being the salt and the light everywhere you go. We'll see you next time.